looks, throws. He's got Golden Tatum, makes the catch. Inside the 15, inside the 10, and he's breaking away. He's into the end zone. Pack the bags, start the plane. This game is over.
1st and 10. The Buffalo 17. Wilson on his back foot to the end zone. Jimmy Graham. Plenty of time left for Seattle in the half with 3 timeouts. To the end zone. Graham tries for another one-handed catch and makes it. Play fake to Kelly. Cousins near side.
That really is a great catch. Jackson maintaining possession.
How's it going, fellas? Welcome back to the CFFL podcast. This is episode 3. Today we're going to go over keeper rules. We're going to go over lots of keeper rules because that's new this year. We're also going to go over some new rules we also put into place. But really we're focusing on all the rules that aren't very common to every fantasy league that you need to know in order to succeed in this league. If you don't know these things, there's no way you're going to be able to compete effectively in this leagues. So shit is changing. If you don't pay attention, you will fail. Today, we are going over basic keeper rules, complicated keeper rules, uncommon rules specific to the CFFL, and the league calendar. So this might be the most important podcast that you could possibly watch. If you haven't gone back and watched the other podcast on scoring and league format, I would suggest you watch that too. You watch those 2 videos, you're going to be able to function at a high level in this league. So, to get us started, basic keeper rules. This is the new stuff. So, each owner can keep 0 to 3 players from their final roster at the end of each season. Players may be kept as long as you would like, as long as they fit the required criteria for keepers, which we're about to go into. Players that are kept will cost a round in the draft. This is known as their keeper value. And no player will have a keeper value later than the 10th round. So if you draft someone in the 13th, 14th round, or someone else does, and you keep them, still the lowest round value they can have is a 10th round pick. So complicated keeper rules. So this is where it's going to get a little more complicated. So we're going to go over the 4 different ways that a player can be kept. So you can keeping a player for the first time they're drafted, keeping a free agent, a player that wasn't drafted, keeping your keeper, so keeping someone that you've already kept the prior year, or keeping someone else's keeper, so keeping someone that another owner has already kept. And then we'll go over some miscellaneous keeper rules as well. So the first one, keeping a drafted player. So if you keep a player that was drafted by any team, so keeping a drafted player by any team the previous year, that will cost the round they were drafted to keep. So we're going to go into some examples here to make things a little bit simpler. So example 1, D's Nuts drafts running back David Johnson with the first pick in the first round. So first round pick. Use a first round pick to draft David Johnson. Next year, D's Nuts decides to keep David Johnson at a cost of a first round pick. That is what he'll cost. He was drafted in the first round, and so he will cost a first round pick the following season to be kept. Now in example 2, D's Nuts drafts David Johnson in the first again, but this time he trades David Johnson to who else but Sergeant Smash, and then Sergeant Smash ends up keeping David Johnson next year at the same cost of a first round pick. So he still costs a first round pick even though Sergeant Smash didn't actually draft him himself. The fact that David Johnson was a first-round pick carries on throughout the entire season, and if anyone keeps David Johnson, he still counts as a first-round pick. All right, so keeping a free agent player. So when an owner keeps a player that went undrafted in the previous year's draft, that kept player will cost a 10th round pick to keep, just a flat 10th round. Plain and simple, nice and easy. So an example given here is, so in 2016, Soulless Saint acquires running back Elijah Hood of the Raiders off waivers. Elijah Hood ends up being the starter next season, so Soulless Saint keeps running back Elijah Hood for a 10th round pick in 2017. Plain and simple. He was a free agent. No one drafted Elijah Hood that year, so he's a free agent. You pick him up. He costs a 10th round pick to keep the next year. So players who were drafted and then dropped do not count as free agents. So I kind of said this a second ago, but if a player is drafted, they count as that keeper value for the entire season until pretty much they carry that value until they go back into the draft pool for the next year, if they go unkept. Otherwise, they still count as a drafted player, and that's what their value will be for that season. Only a player that was not drafted and was picked up off waivers counts as a free agent player, and then their value is a 10th round pick. All right, so keeping your keeper, so keeping a player that you've already kept before. So when an owner keeps a player that they kept the previous year, that kept player will cost the round they were kept at the previous year plus 1 round higher to keep. So going back to the previous example, so in 2016, Soulless Saint picked up Elijah Hood off waivers. In 2017, he kept Elijah Hood for a 10th round pick. In 2018, keeping a player he had already kept, he now costs a 9th round pick to keep. He goes up 1 round. And it keeps going up that way until we get to the first round. So in the event a player reaches a maximum keeper value of a first round pick, their keeper value will remain a first round pick. So once it hits a first round pick keeper value, it stays there. It can't go any higher. There's nothing above a first round pick, but we're not going to not allow you to keep that person just because they've reached their max value and then some. So once they hit first round pick, they can't go any higher, but you can continue to keep them at a first round pick. So an example, D's Nuts keeps running back David Johnson for another season in 2019 for second year in a row. He will keep him for a first round pick. It's plain and simple. So what happens when an owner keeps a player that another owner had kept the previous year? That kept player will cost the round they were kept that previous year. So we don't penalize that multiple kept season penalty, like if you were to keep your own player for 2 consecutive years. So for example, in 2017, Vicious and Delicious drafts Allen Robinson in the 4th round. In 2018, beginning of the season, Vicious and Delicious decides to keep Allen Robinson for the 4th rounder. So far, so good. In 2019, Vicious and Delicious then decides, you know what, I'm going to keep Allen Robinson for a second year. So that's going to be a 3rd round pick now. He gets the 1-year penalty. But during that season, after keeping Allen Robinson, he trades him to Humble Domination. So then Humble Domination decides, hey, I'm going to keep Allen Robinson in 2020, but he'll keep him at a 3rd round, the same that Vicious and Delicious did in 2019. There isn't that 1 round penalty for keeping a player for consecutive years. Now, you little bastards are going to say, what happens if Vicious and Delicious trades Allen Robinson to Humble Domination, then Humble Domination trades him back to Vicious and Delicious? That will still count as Vicious and Delicious keeping him for a 3rd year in a row. So don't try and be sneaky, you little bitches. It's all in the rule book. Everything I say here today, by the way, I'm trying to help you guys out. If I misspeak or if something's misinterpreted here, it all goes back to the rule book. This guy here, it's all in here. All the specifics. We live, we breathe, we die by this thing right here. Put a lot of work into it. You should all have this hopefully by now. You should be living and breathing this guy. Alright, so some miscellaneous keeper rules. When an owner keeps multiple players with the same keeper value, they must have multiple picks in that round. Otherwise, the keeper value for all but one of the players will increase by 1 round, and that will be their new keeper value. I'm about to go into examples in a minute, but let me talk about the other type of keeper situation. So in the event that multiple players have a keeper value of the first round, their owner must have multiple first-round picks. Otherwise, they may only keep the amount of players they have first-round picks for. So, example 1. The Cleansing wants to keep running back Spencer Ware and Tyreek Hill, who both have a keeper value of a 4th-round pick. So he can't manage to obtain another 4th-round pick. So he only has one 4th-round pick. Both these guys cost a 4th-round pick. So he can't keep them both at a 4th-round pick. He only has one. So what happens is one of those players he will designate as a 3rd-round pick, and the other can be kept as the 4th-round pick. And then going forward, those will be their new values. So say he makes Spencer Ware his 3rd-round pick and Tyreek Hill his 4th-round pick. Next year, they will have those same exact designations. It won't go back to a 4 and a 4. All right. So in example 2, we have ... He wants to keep running back Le'Veon Bell and Julio Jones, who both have a keeper value of a 1st-round pick. He cannot attain a second 1st-round pick, so he doesn't have enough picks to keep both guys at a 1st round. So what happens is he simply just can't keep both. It's just not possible. So he has to pick one to keep and the other to drop. Plain and simple. All right, last 2 keeper miscellaneous rules here, I think. IR keeper value relief. So when you have a player that goes on IR before the start of week 7, that player's keeper value will be 2 rounds lower than what their keeper value would have normally been. I'll go over an example here in a minute. This keeper value is only applicable if the player was on the owner's team prior to going on the actual NFL IR. So you can't just scoop someone up off free agency that was put onto IR. You don't get that keeper value relief. It's only if you have a valuable player on your team, they go on IR while they're on your team, then you can receive that keeper value relief. So the example is DP Hit Squad. He drafts Adrian Peterson in the 1st round in 2016. Adrian Peterson gets placed on IR while on DP Hit Squad's active roster. So then in 2017, if DP Hit Squad wants to keep Adrian Peterson, he keeps him for a 3rd rounder instead of a 1st rounder. That is just our way to kind of offset the bad luck of possibly a key player getting horribly injured, and most likely they're going to drop in the draft next year in redraft leagues, so we're kind of trying to help offset that a little bit. All right, I don't know why that's offset. That's obnoxious, but whatever. So we're about to go over, that's it for keepers. So this last bit is just new and or uncommon rules specific to our league. So these are things you need to know that aren't going to be quite the same as maybe your other leagues. So first off, we're just talking about IR. We added the IR spot this year. Each owner can keep one player on the IR, and that IR spot is only good if they're actually on an NFL IR. So if they're out, if they're suspended, those don't count. They actually have to be on the NFL IR in order to be placed on our league's IR spot. Once that player is removed from the NFL team's IR, the owner that has that player, they need to make sure they get that person off the IR and onto their active roster, or release them, make the appropriate move before that player's game starts. If that player's game starts and they're still on the IR, on the fantasy football IR, then the commissioner will drop that player to waivers, and that's that. No player may be kept in the IR spot after roster's lock. So I'll go over our league calendar here in a minute. But when rosters lock, you cannot have anyone in the IR spot. Otherwise, they will also be dropped to waivers. All right. So a couple other miscellaneous things here. Auto drafters. We don't like auto drafters. We're sick of it. And so auto drafters will be relegated to the last pick in every round of the draft. So you will always pick in the 12th spot of every round. That's just our way of saying, you know what, there's no excuses for not being able to attend the draft in some fashion. So So this is our way to motivate you guys to make sure you're participating in the actual draft. So, and next miscellaneous rule here is fab carryover. So this is new this year. At the end of the season, any owner that has up to 35 fab remaining, up to 35 fab, you can carry that fab over to the next season. So if I have 10 fab at the end of the year, I carry that over to next year. If I have 35 fab, I carry that over to next year. If I have 50 fab, I still just get 35 fab carried over to next year. So that's just a way of, I guess, rewarding people who didn't utilize all their fab and maybe want to stockpile for next season, because this season's a lost season. It's just a way to kind of help with that. Excuse me. All right, sorry. So, earning bonus fab. We did this last year. We had about 4 or 5 people participate, but not nearly as many as it should. Each owner each week can earn 2 additional fab for weeks 1 through 10 by posting a quality video, article, or poll. The fellowship will decide whether it's quality or not, but use your common sense. The bonus fab will be awarded the following week. So if you do a video, as soon as this podcast posts, if you post something out there, that'll count towards week 1, and you'll be awarded 2 additional fab after week 1 concludes, and that'll be the same thing going weeks 1 through 10. So you can earn an additional 20 fab, which is pretty significant, just by participating with a video, an article, or poll every week. It's an easy way to make extra 20 fab. You should be utilizing that. You never know what's going to be out there on waivers. We're on keepers now, so players might have more value on the waiver wire. It should be interesting. All right. So speaking of waivers, players that are dropped. We had some confusion about this last year. So players that are dropped after the blind bidding period. So after all the fab processes on Wednesday at 12, any players dropped after that point will be locked until 12 the next day, which in most cases will be Thursday. All players after that 12 p.m. cutoff on Thursday are going to be first come, first serve. So there's not a second waiver process. It's just simple. Everyone becomes first come, first serve after 12 p.m. the day following waiver processing, which in most cases will be Thursday at noon. So Thursday at noon, it becomes a free-for-all for any free agents. Playoffs and draft lottery implications. This past year, we just did 12 names in the draft lottery machine, and that's how it was. But going forward, the playoffs and loser bracket are going to really matter in terms of the draft lottery. So going forward, there will be 2 draft lotteries: the loser bracket lottery and the winner bracket lottery. The loser bracket lottery will determine the order the first 6 selections are made, spot selections. So the first 6 players that will get to select their draft spot. The winners bracket will determine the last 6 owners that get to pick their draft slot. So how that works is, so during the playoffs, there's a playoff bracket and there's the loser bowl bracket, right? So the first place team, in the winners bracket, in the winners bracket, there's going to be the 6 teams that were in the playoffs. So if you got first place, you're going to get 1 ball. If you get second place, you're going to get 2 balls. If you get third place, 3 balls. Fourth place, 4. Fifth and sixth, you get 5 balls apiece. So each ball is going to equal 5% chance of getting your name drawn in the draft lottery. In the winner bracket's case, that's going to be for the last 6 spot selections. So obviously, if you win first place, you have the least likely chance of picking in that first of the back 6 selections. And if you come in 5th or 6th place, then you have equal chance there. The losers bracket is really kind of where this really matters. So we're trying to give you some motivation to keep playing, even though you didn't make the playoff bracket. So the more games you win in the losers bracket, the more balls you're going to have for the draft lottery. So by winning in the losers bracket, you are increasing your chances of having a higher draft selection the following season. So this stuff is really going to matter going forward. So not only that, but you don't want to get last place because you get to wear that lovely tiara with the pink sash and wear that license plate frame on your car all season. So lots of motivation to not be last place, lots of motivation to continue participating even through the playoffs, whether you're in the winners bracket or the losers bracket. And so we're trying to extend how long everyone gets to participate in fantasy football. So this is my last page here. Thanks for bearing with me here. But this is the league calendar. This is going to be the league calendar every year from here onward. It's going to be the same every single year. So again, no excuses on, oh, I didn't know that was due, or I didn't know that was happening. This is going to be the same every year, and it's been more or less like this for the last couple years. But anyway, quick rundown. So the Sunday prior to the NFL draft, at least half of the league fees are due from everybody. The day of the NFL draft, we hold an NFL draft party. We give out previous year awards, and the new season officially begins. So any trade talks or whatnot that happen between the end of the season and this day, no trades are official until NFL draft starts. That kicks off the new season. Any trade talks that were going on prior become official then. July 31st, complete league fees are due. The Hall of Fame game, which we just recently had, we do the draft lottery, or lotteries going forward. There'll be multiple now. And then with the losers bracket and the winner bracket. And then 11 days after the Hall of Fame game, the draft order should be set. And then going forward, the Monday after week 3 of the preseason completing, keeper selections will be due. So after the first 3 preseason games, the Monday after that, that's when your keepers will be due. Then the Sunday before Labor Day, that's the draft. We always do the draft the Sunday before Labor Day. Sunday before Labor Day, draft day. Just put that on your calendar every year. All right, and then the day before week 10 starts, that is the trade deadline. It's the last day you can complete trades, the day before week 10 starts. And then the kickoff of the last game in week 16, that's when rosters lock. So the kickoff of the final game on week 16, rosters lock. So any players you have on your team, that is locked in. That is a snapshot of what your roster will be for when it comes to looking at who you can keep going into the following year, who you can trade. That is your roster. There's going to be no roster moves after the kickoff of the last week's 16 game. All right, guys. So I went over a lot there, and hopefully you're able to follow me. If you weren't, again, the rule book. It's all in here. Every detail. This is the Bible here. This goes over everything. So any questions, I guarantee that the answers are in there. Check it out. All right, guys. My next video probably won't come till after the draft. I'll do a draft recap, unless one of you guys want to get together and put something together in the meantime. But until then, guys, thanks for watching. Take it easy.